Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. I just knocked over some oil in my house, so that was really fun to clean up. All right. Got lots to go over tonight, so I hope that we'll get some followers on, and got lots of topics to cover. Cheers before we get started. Cheers. All right. So I've compiled a list of things that I wanted to cover based on questions that I've been asked on my videos, based on messages that people have been sending to me, based on DMs that I'm getting. I do not want to accept anybody right now. So we have quite a few things to go over. While we're waiting, if you have any specific questions or personal questions, this is just the few of us, go ahead and drop it in and I can answer any personal questions right now. And then once more people join, we'll get started. What I did today, which is different than what I did before, is I wrote everything down, and I'm gonna actually take my phone off and flip it, so that way then you guys can take a screenshot of what it is that I'm reviewing with everybody, so that way then you have it too, so you can have it saved. So, all right, we are getting ready to rock and roll. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today is fixed and variable expenses, our surplus money, how do we get to that surplus money, and then what do we do with it, and what does surplus even mean. Then we're going to go over how do you pay down your credit cards, like the process of how we can work on that, a specific example of what the snowball method is, kind of written out for you, and then sinking funds, and go over like the sinking funds and what they are. All right, so I'm just gonna start, and hopefully if I have to go back and repeat some things, that's fine. All right. So the first thing that I wanted to, I'm going to read it kind of off of this, and then I'll flip it around for you guys to be able to take a screenshot. So the first thing that we're going to go over again, just because it's the first step in the whole process after you've done your goals, is your fixed and variable expenses. So again, those fixed expenses are the ones that are they're the recurring charges that are predictable. They stay the same every single month on the same day as well. So it's the same amount, the same due date every single month. Examples of those would be your rent, your mortgage, your car payments, loans, your utility bills, things like that. Okay. Your variable expenses, they're less predictable. Those are the ones that tend to fluctuate based on you really, and really on us and our personal spending habits. But there's still bills that we have, right? So that's like, actually your credit cards go in there in your variable expenses. And then additionally, you have like your gas, your groceries, your entertainment. So like your gas bill could vary, because if you're going on vacation and you're going to be driving, you might have to allocate for more money, put in that, in that gas criteria. So just to continue going over that. So you're going to make a list of all your fixed and your variable expenses, and then the amount for each of those due dates. So again, I have everything written down, and I'm going to turn my screen around shortly, and I'm going to let everyone be able to have an opportunity to take a screenshot of it and have it saved, so that way then you can go back to it. That's the benefit of being on a live, is that you're getting additional information that maybe in a 30-second or a 60-second video I don't get to actually detail. So we just went over again what the fixed and the variable expenses. So what you're going to do is you're going to make that list of all your fixed and your variable expenses, what each one is, and the due date that's due. Then what you're going to do with your variable expenses, you're either going to, because sometimes I've had a lot of people question, like, I don't know what to do. How do you track something that varies from month to month? So for those variable expenses, you have to track I suggest that you track your spending based on saving your receipts and stuff. So if you're going to the grocery store, take your receipts and kind of just put them aside at the end of the month, add them all up, and then divide it by 4, and that'll give you a rough average of about how much you spend per month. So like for myself, I did that when I was doing it, and I roughly spent like $800, let's say, for the month. Divide that by 4, and I get $200 a week. So that's how I came up with my budget of $200 a week for restaurants and I'm sorry, for groceries. So it's you can track your receipts, so it's really important to keep your receipts. Same thing when you go to get gas. So if you're going to the gas pump, get the receipt at the end, put all those aside every single time anyone gets gas. Then at the end of the month you add those all up and then divide it by 4, and then that'll give you a rough estimate of approximately how much money you're spending per week on gas, so that you're able to account appropriately, or at least have some more, like somewhat of a realistic estimate or guesstimate of what your variable expenses would be. The other option that you can do is you can actually also go back and look at a bill from the same time a year ago. So if you go back to, so like this is August 2021, if you wanted to find out what your utility bill is for what it's going to be for September 2021, you can go back and look at September 2020, and you'll be able to get like a kind of a good idea of what that estimate is. If you look at like a bill from the same time from the year before. Then what you're going to do is you're going to add up all those fixed and those variable expenses. Okay, when you add up all those fixed, and included in your variable expenses is pretty much whatever you would expect to be spending on a monthly basis. So that's where you would add in, like if you're doing Dunkin' Donuts and you're going for coffee, or if you do restaurants or dining out, or you get pizza once a week, or you like to, you're going to the movies with your family, whatever it is. Every single thing that you would be expecting to spend for that month should be listed in your fixed and your variable expenses. Then what you do is you add them all up at the end of the month, and then you subtract that from your monthly salary, and that money is considered your surplus. Okay. So when budgeting credit cards, at this stage, you budget the minimum due every single month. I put that down as a separate. So at this point, when you are budgeting those credit cards and your variable expenses, you're budgeting what your minimum is each month. So hypothetically, if your bill is $1,000 and you have a $50 minimum, that's what you're going to write down, just the $50 minimum. When we go over in a little bit about how to get rid of the credit card debt, we'll go more into detail about that $1,000 balance. I'm going to share with you what I wrote down, so that way then if you want to screenshot it, I know if I pick it up, it's going to be, can I flip the screen on this? Yep, flip camera. All right, so this is what I just went over, if you wanted to take a screenshot of that. So that way then you have it for yourself at a later time. So again, that's just explaining to you the difference between fixed and variable expenses. And this is pretty much like the starting point. This is your jumping off point with creating that monthly budget. All right, you list out all those fixed and those variable expenses. You make a list of what they are, the amount that each one is, the due date. You can track those variable expenses, and then you subtract it from what your monthly income is, and what that gives you is your surplus. So at that point, after all your bills, that money that's left over is going to be your surplus. All right, let me flip it back. All right, wait, let me just look at, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, good. All right, let me put this back up. Sorry. All right, so then moving on, what do you do with that surplus money? Now that you've figured out all of your monthly expenses for the month, what do you do with that surplus money? So there's three things that you would be focusing on with that surplus. The first thing would be the emergency fund. So the other day, or I don't even remember, I think it was yesterday, but possibly even earlier today, I posted a video about Dave Ramsey's concept or philosophy of saving $1,000, and that is a recommendation and a tip that I shared with you. I do recommend that you have $1,000 at this point. If you have credit card debt, you don't need any more than $1,000 in a savings account. If you have more than $1,000, then I'd recommend that you just leave the $1,000 and take the extra money that you have and you put that towards paying down the debt. I know sometimes there's like that emotional tug, like, what if I'm going to need it for something? But the reality is that you'll be quicker to pull out your credit card and use that than you will to be using that money that's in savings. So at this point, your goal and your focus is to get out of debt. And if you have a surplus of money in your savings account, you only need the $1,000 at this point. That way, then, if God forbid something happens, an incident happens, your car needs to get towed, you need to replace something in the house. Usually that $1,000 could cover, most of whatever it is that would be going on. All right. So again, this first thing is the emergency fund, which I'm going to go over in detail. The other two things that you would do with that surplus money is paying down the credit card debt with that extra money, or then your sinking funds. So the sinking funds. The sinking funds are those short, mid, and long-term goals. That was step one, where I had you sit down and actually be intentional with what your goals were. What are your short-term goals, your mid-term goals, and your long-term goals? What are you looking to acquire in the next 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, or 6 to 12 months, and 12 months plus? If you are in mounting credit card debt, then your sinking funds would be very realistic. We're going to go over that in a few minutes as well. Or I have that down. We're going to go over that at some point tonight as well. But right now, the first thing that you should be focusing on is getting that $1,000 of an emergency fund in your account. All right, so I'm going to share this in a second too. So I wrote, if you have $1,000 now in savings, good. Move on and start paying down those credit cards, which is the snowball method, which I'm going to go over in a few minutes. And then you could start building towards those sinking funds. If you have more than $1,000 now, just like I just said, use the remainder to pay down those credit cards and just leave the $1,000 in your savings just in case. And you're to leave it alone. You're not to touch it. That is strictly there, and just think of it as just emergency. It's emergency funds only. If you don't have $1,000 in your savings account now, then you're only going to be paying, then my recommendation is that you only pay the minimum on all of your credit cards until you're able to use your surplus money and put it aside to save $1,000. Okay, so if that takes you 6 months, unfortunately, if it takes you 6 months to be able to save the $1,000, then that's the time frame for you. There is no, we all would love to get out of debt, right away. It took me 4 years to get out of debt. So, and I had to make some sacrifices along the way, which we're going to go over as well. But if you have to, you have to have that $1,000 in the savings, because otherwise what'll happen is if you don't have the $1,000 in the savings and then you start trying to pay down your credit card debt, and let's say you're really successful and you're able to pay down, 6 months go by and you're able to pay down $2,000-3,000 worth of credit card debt, and then something happens. Now you don't have any money in savings. You're going to be stuck having to use that credit card again. So that's kind of the whole rationale behind why having $1,000 in an emergency fund is a good idea. So I'm going to, again, flip the screen again just to kind of share this with you. So if you wanted to take a screenshot of that again, surplus money. So the three things that you're going to do with that surplus, which is that extra money that's left after you've paid all your fixed and your variable expenses. You're going to start first on an emergency fund, and then you're going to also use that money to pay down credit card debt or your sinking funds. Okay, so the emergency fund, just going over it again, I have it this way so you can screenshot it if you need it. If you have $1,000 now in savings, good, move on to pay down the credit card, start snowballing, and then building towards those sinking funds. If you have more than $1,000 now, and use the remainder then to pay down the credit cards if you have more than 1,000. I had somebody on the other night that said they had over $10,000, but they were in credit card debt. So my recommendation was just that: leave the $1,000, take that $9,000 or whatever extra it is, and pay down. With that $9,000, you might be able to pay off all of your credit card debt and just start saving. Now your surplus money is just going right back into the bank. That's the whole idea. If you do not have $1,000 in savings, then you should only pay the minimum on credit cards until you have the $1,000 saved up. All right. I'm going to turn it back, and if anybody needs to take a, you'll just let me know. Okay. So how do you pay down that credit card debt? So now let's say that you have the $1,000 in savings, you saved your emergency fund, and now you want to start tackling this credit card debt. So how do you pay it down? How do you, how do I get to that point? So the method that I had done a video on, and I explained, because somebody had asked me that specific question, and I responded in a video. So you can go back and check that out for a quick 60-second response to it. But the more rich response is using your surplus money. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to list out all those credit card balances. The total balance, not how much you're paying a month. You're going to list out how much you're paying a month as well, but you want to list out the total amount. If it's a $5,000 bill, then you're going to, if that's what you've charged, then you're going to list out that $5,000. So you're going to list out each and every one of the credit cards that you have and the total balances that are due on each, the total balances overall that are on each of them. Then what you're going to do is you're going to organize those credit card bills, the totals, from largest all the way down to smallest. Okay, so you're going to organize them from the largest amount, overall outstanding balance, down to the smallest outstanding balance. Then you're just going to focus on the credit cards with the smallest outstanding balance first. Okay, so you're going to take that credit card that has the smallest outstanding balance. So if you have, let's just say, a Macy's credit card that has $300 on it, that's the one that but you have a Chase credit card that has $15,000, you're going to focus on the $300 one at Macy's first. Okay, you start small when we're snowballing. Then what you do is you pay the minimum on all the minimum due on all of your credit cards. Okay, so from the largest one all the way down, you're going to have that minimum number set aside. Then what you do is that surplus money that you have, you add your surplus money, whatever is left over after you fixed in your variable expenses, that's your surplus. You take that surplus money and you add that to that smallest balance. So let's hypothetically say your surplus is $500, but you only had $300 on Macy's. You just paid off that credit card. So now you would pay off that credit card and you'd be able to send the $200 additional to now the previous card. Okay, so the whole idea is to start with the smallest. So you make the minimum payments on all of the cards, and then that smallest card is the one that you're tackling first. And then you keep snowballing all the way up. Let me turn you around so that I can show you this, and then I'm going to give you the examples. Actually, I'll explain the examples and then I'll show it to you. So for example, actually no, I'll show it to you as we go over it. Let me just flip you around. So here is this, what I just explained, if you wanted to take a screenshot of it. So how do I pay down that credit card debt? The snowball and avalanche method. Here's how it works. Using your surplus money, you're going to list out all of those credit card balances, the total or the outstanding balance that's due. You're going to organize them from the largest to the smallest balances. You're going to focus on the credit card with the smallest outstanding balance first. You're going to pay minimum amount due each month to all of the other credit cards. And then you're going to add that surplus money to the lowest credit card in addition to its minimum amount due. All right, I'm going to leave you guys flipped while I go over this one. So that way then you could take a screenshot of them. So here's an example of what it is. This is all just a sample. So I listed all my credit cards. So this is my credit cards. This is the total amount. And then this is the minimum amount due each month. So let's say I have a Chase credit card. The total outstanding balance is $12,500, but my minimum per month is $500. Then I have a Citibank with a $10,000 balance, $400 minimum per month. Then I have a Best Buy credit card with $5,500 on it with a $150 minimum balance. Amazon with a $3,000 balance and it's $125 a month. Then I have a Target card that has $25,000 charged on it with $100 minimum a month. Then what you do is you add up all of your minimum totals. These are the minimums that you would be paying on them each and every month. And that comes out to $1,275. Sorry, let me try not to jiggle my hands around. That comes out to $1,275. This asterisk is here for a purpose. So this is the number that you would be using for your variable expenses estimate per month. So when you go back to listing your fixed and your variable expenses, these are the numbers that you would be using for your fixed and your variable. So this $1,275 isn't additional money that you're going to need on top of your fixed and variable expenses. This is already averaged in to your variable expenses and your overall spending for the month. Okay? Let me know if that makes sense. So now let's say your surplus after you've paid all of your bills is $500 a month. You would pay the minimum on the 4 largest credit cards. So I'm going to pay my minimum because I've already allocated this money in my budget based on my variable expenses. So I'm paying Chase the $500, I'm paying Citibank the $400, I'm paying Best Buy the $150, and I'm paying Amazon the $125. Now your balance, even though these are already accounted for in your variable expenses, they're not going to change every month because you're not going to use your credit card. Okay, the whole point of this actually working is that you're committed to getting out of debt and you're not going to be using your credit cards. So this should be a fairly good estimate every month of what you're paying, your minimums, because you didn't charge any more on Chase or Citibank or Best Buy or Amazon. Because if you wanted to go and buy something at Target, you've allocated that in your variable expenses. So you now know what your grocery shopping at Target's going to be, or your cleaning supplies totals are going to be. So you don't have to use that credit card because that's what you put in your variable expenses when you figured out your groceries. Okay. So now what you're going to do is these estimates should stay the same. So you paid the minimum on all of them per month. And now you're going to focus on this last one. Okay. So all your surplus money, your extra surplus. So if we had $500 a month in our surplus, you pay the minimum on all 4 of the cards. And then that last card, you would put the surplus, which is your $500, in addition to the $100 minimum, because you already allocated that $100 in your variable expenses. So now for the month, you're going to be sending Target $600. Let me know if that makes sense to everybody. So because you already budgeted this money when you did your line items for your variable, you're already planning on sending Target $100. Now you have your surplus money, which is left over, and you're going to send your $500 with your $100 minimum that you already budgeted, and now you're going to send Target $600 a month. Once Target is paid off, then you're going to snowball. That's where the word snowball or avalanche comes in. Then you're going to snowball the money. So the $600 that you were paying to Target to the Amazon. So now you're doing the $600 plus what you were paying them, the $125. You were paying them $125 all along. So now you're paying $725 to Amazon. Then you pay that until this balance is all gone. Now that's $725. When that's gone, now you start to go to this one. Now you do the $725 plus the $150, and now you're paying $875 a month to Best Buy until that balance is gone. Now that $875, once that's gone, you would add the $400 to there. Now you'd be paying the $1275. I don't have it written out, but just to kind of finish it through, then you'd be paying $1275 a month to the Citibank. And then once that's done, you would add the other $5, so that would be $1775. And then that's how you tackle paying down the debt. You could actually calculate roughly how many months it would take to get you out of debt. because again, like I said before, you're not using any of the credit cards. So the balances are only just going to continue to decrease slightly per month because you're not using any of the credit cards. But you should be able to calculate out. I mean, if you're paying $600 and this is $2,500, it's going to roughly take about 4 months, and then that card's going to be gone. Now you're going to be paying $725. That's going to take roughly another 4 months, 5 months, and that's actually 4 months, and that'll be gone too. So now in 8 months, you've gotten rid of 2 of them. And then within the year, you pretty much have most of Best Buy gone too, because now your balance is increasing. And that's how the snowball method works. Now, that's accounting if your surplus is $500, and if you're choosing to put all of the $500 directly to your credit cards. What I spoke about earlier, which I can go back for some of you that just joined, and I'm leaving you guys like this for right now while I go over this, so you can take screenshots of it so you could go back and look at it. Let's go over the sinking funds, because that's then the next thing. So we didn't talk about the sinking funds. All we did was we allocated our surplus money to all the credit cards. Now, your sinking funds is that money that you save each month to help you reach your short, mid, and long-term goals, right? So that's the money that you're going to be putting aside for that. So for examples, it might be like holidays, vacations, a house. It could be anything, right? You're getting married, you're moving, whatever, back to school shopping. It could, birthdays, whatever. There's a lot. It varies based on every person. My recommendation, if you have a lot of credit card debt and not a lot of surplus money, then try to be realistic with your sinking funds and maybe just focus on 1 or 2. So maybe you want to just focus on 1 or 2. I mean, is like a vacation really going to be in the cards? If you have $25,000 or $30,000 in credit card debt, like I did, I had to say, we're not doing any kind of a large vacation. We're going to just do, something small, because it's more important that I put the extra money towards paying off this debt, and then we could take a larger vacation. So you just have to be realistic, right? If you're working with a smaller amount of money, then you have to you have to have a conversation with yourself and be realistic and, sacrifice right now. I put that in here somewhere. I'm gonna read what I wrote. Down here. So be realistic with your sinking funds. Maybe just have 1 or 2. So that the bulk of your surplus money goes to paying down your credit cards. If your surplus is $500 a month, maybe allocate $100 to a sinking fund. So maybe the only sinking fund that you would want to focus on is holidays and birthdays, because you know that those are things that you can't skimp on. You know that those are going to be upcoming expenses that you're going to have. So maybe you would just only focus on those, and everything else would go by the wayside for a while. And then you would put the extra $400 to pay down those credit cards. So it would go back to the same exact thing that we did just previously, but instead of putting the $500, you would be putting $100 to, let's say, birthdays and holidays, so $50 each, or maybe $75 and $25, whatever. And then you wouldn't have the $500 to put here, you'd be putting the $400. So you would be sending $500 a month to Target until it's paid off, and then vice versa, okay? And then possibly maybe when you get to, there's ways which you can, just to kind of sidetrack for a second, there's ways in which you can try to make more money from your surplus money as well. So I'll cover that in just a second. So just to keep in mind, this is what I started to say before. You need to make sacrifices to your lifestyle now if you want to pay off your debt and free up your money. You have to make sacrifices. I know it's really hard, and I'm sorry to have to tell you something negative, but it's just being realistic. And as if I was, if I was consulting you on this is what I would be telling you, that the only way you're going to get to your end game, which is to get debt free, it means that you have to make those sacrifices. You cannot be pulling out the credit cards and using them and trying to snowball at the same time. The balances will never go down, and you'll still be trapped in this vicious cycle of going back and forth. I'm going to go on over to, that was the last one. All right. So, going back to like what I just started to say, if anybody wants me to give you guys the screenshots again, the images again, so you can screenshot, just let me know if you missed them. I went over 5 different papers that I shared. The other day I was doing it, I was writing it at the same time, sorry. I was writing it at the same time that I was live, and it just, when I hold it up, it's a mirrored image. It's not, right? It's not showing on your end as the right, it's backwards. So I wanted to just flip it. So let's say that, you know, after you've paid all your fixed and your variable expenses, you know, your surplus is small. You don't have a huge surplus of money. There's ways that you can try to, you know, trim the fat. I've used that a couple of times in some comments. Like I said, I've had a lot of people sending me, either DMing me or they're sending me emails, which that's fine. If you feel that you need to, you know, ask me a very personal or specific question, I'm more than willing to help and assist. That's why I'm doing this. I just want everyone to also try to come to the lives and watch the videos, because I don't, you know, a lot of the information I am giving. I keep using the phrase trim the fat. So there are ways in which you can try to trim the fat. And the ways in which you'll be able to do that are in your variable expenses. So your variable expenses is where you have your groceries. So there's ways to trim the fat with the groceries. You know, one of the things that I did was I had to stay away from like those big box stores. I had to stay away from like Costco and BJ's. Now, although Costco or BJ's is more cost effective when it comes to like toilet paper and paper towels and things like that, so I would go there, but I made a list. Number one, make a list. Just like I have you guys writing down your budget right now, it's real. Writing down there is definitely a special power in writing things down. Write down a list. I know that we've like kind of got very accustomed to like being digital and just using our phones and just walking in there and walking up and down aisles, but that's how you end up grabbing more things. I posted a video the other day where I have people that come and clean my house. They were coming today. Yesterday I needed to go. They gave me a list of things that I needed. I went there with the list. I took the money out of my cash stuffing that I had allocated for, you know, Target money. I had the list that she sent me of the things that she needed, and I saw other things while I was there, and I was so tempted. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need this. And I said, no, I didn't. I only came into this store today because I needed to get these cleaning supplies, and that's all I need. And I walked out of there spending only $26. I normally wouldn't walk out of Target anything less than $50, and there's always an impulse buy for me anyway. So for me, that was a huge win, right? Because if I would have walked out of there spending $50 and I only spent $26, I've already saved myself $26, and that's how I trim the fat. That's how you trim the fat. Going back to the groceries is another big way in which you can trim your fat. One of the things that I did, like I started to say, is I stayed away from the big box stores. However, they are cost effective for some of like, you know, like your paper goods and things like that. So I made the list, and I would go there and I would just get those things. Sometimes I would opt to go to BJ's. I don't know if BJ's is in your area, but Costco doesn't have this, but BJ's does. BJ's takes manufacturer coupons, and then they also send their own coupons. So you're able to double dip. You're able to use the coupons from there, and you're able to use manufacturer coupons. So that was kind of like a win-win. Not that I was much of a coupon clipper, but sometimes I would. You know, if you get $1 off Bounty and you're at BJ's and they have a coupon for $5 off, and now you have another $1. Now it's $6 off. It ends up being cheaper than the BJ's brand paper towels. And not that you know, the Bounty brand is better than BJ's. I would buy the BJ's brand anyway. It's just that I was just strictly looking at it line for line, dollar for dollar. I wasn't about, in that sense, it didn't matter to me about what the brand was. What mattered to me more was what my dollar amount was and what I was spending. The second thing I did was I would wait and on the Saturday or whatever it is, the Sundays when the ads would come out for the local grocery stores, I would go and I would look at the ads before I would go to the supermarket. I would look online and I would find out what was on sale, what meat's on sale this week. Pork's on sale, we're making pork this week. That's what we're having for dinner. I would, you know, listen, I'm good at this stuff. I'm not a great cook. So I would use Google to help me get recipes and ideas to be able to make. Sometimes I would buy just the meats sometimes I would just buy, you know, maybe just pork and and chicken breasts were on sale, or chicken legs, and that was all that I would buy. I wouldn't buy ground beef or something else to add and to make more things. I would just buy those two. So now I have all this pork. Now I need to find multiple ways to be able to cook it. That's what the website's for. It didn't matter. It was the sacrifice that I made so that I could reach my end goal. To me, what was important was getting out of debt. I felt like for the money that was coming in, too much was going out, and too much money was tied up in debt and outstanding debt, and I didn't like that. I didn't feel comfortable with it, so I was willing to make that sacrifice. So again, shop those sale items. If Chips Ahoy's were on sale, but the kids wanted Oreos, we got Chips Ahoy's. Sorry guys, that's what you're getting. That's what's on sale. Those little sacrifices are what those are ways that you can trim the fat. So now going back to what I had said earlier, if you add up all your grocery receipts, let's say you're not sure what your variable expenses would be for groceries. So let's say my suggestion is you keep all your receipts, put them aside for a month, and track everything that you're listening to right now. You might, like everything that I've been showing and everything that I've been explaining in my lives, maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you don't have a good idea or a good gauge on what your variable expenses are. So what you would do then is you just listen, right? You could be in the contest phases. It's called, would be the contemplation phase, where you're contemplating getting your mindset, and you're just kind of taking everything in and trying to process it and get it all organized in your mind. So what you do from now until maybe September 1st is everything that you spend normally, spend like you normally would, and then just start putting those receipts aside. Usually we don't keep receipts. I know for myself, before that, when I was at the gas pump and it asked me for a receipt, I would just say no. Then I got in the habit of saying yes, and then I'd put that gas receipt aside in a gas receipt folder, and then I tallied it up at the end of the month, and that gave me an average of how much money I was spending on gas, and that was how I was able to take that total and divide it by 4 and figure out what my average was for the week. So I did the same thing with groceries, roughly spending $800 a month on groceries. That comes out to 4 weeks in a month, roughly $200 a week. So if my budget's $200 a week for right now, before I'm really being a penny pincher and really trying to be, trim that fat and be a cost saver, if my budget was $200 a week, now if I'm being intentional with shopping, and I'm making sure that I'm shopping sale items, I'm not overbuying. That was my hugest downfall. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but one of the biggest things that I did was I would buy bulk. I would buy extra things. And I'd freeze it, and I'd have extra supplies. Or I would buy, like, okay, we got paid every 2 weeks. I would go grocery shopping every 2 weeks, and I would buy 2 weeks worth of stuff. Well, what ended up happening, one of the weekends is all my kids would have friends over, and then all the snacks were gone, and now we have a whole week where we don't have any snacks, and I got to go to the store and rebuy. So I was spending double the amount. So I started to just shop once a week. That's another way to save. If you get paid once a month, don't shop once a month. Maybe balance it out and shop just once a week, so that way then you're using everything. You don't have tons of food stocked in your pantry. Like my pantry was stuffed with things. Start shopping your pantry. Look in your pantry. What do you have that you can make multiple meals with? Maybe you only have to go out and buy 3 meals worth of, for 3 days, because you have enough stuff in the house for 4 days. So now if you can get that $200 down to $150 a week, now you've saved $50 a week that you were able to trim the fat. Now times that by 4, that's $200 a month. Now your surplus of $500 now just became a surplus of $700. Now that $200, maybe that $200 is where you want to put to the sinking funds, and you're still going to focus on that $500 going to the credit cards. Making sense? Is it kind of like, just kind of want to get a pulse of everybody's understanding in where I'm at, and how I'm explaining how to get to that end game, which is living debt free. Do we have any questions? Anybody have any specific questions? I know a couple of people had messaged me. I said, come to the live and ask. So I just, I'm ready to answer some of those questions. Let me know any specific questions that you have. Where we're going to go from here is we're going to continue to kind of track our weekly spending. We're going to continue to track our monthly spending, and we're going to continue to figure out if we have enough money for an emergency fund, and then how we are snowballing that extra money. Okay, so did you close the credit cards after you paid them off? No, I didn't. So thank you for that good question. If on top of being in debt, you are also struggling with your credit score, then you do not close your credit cards. You pay them down, because part of the way in which your credit score is calculated is based on the length of how long you've had the credit. Okay, so if you opened up the credit card 5 years ago and now you've paid off the balance, and you've had it all 5 years because you've always had a balance on it, and now you've paid off the balance, it's fine, just leave it there. Because there's a couple of ways in which they calculate your credit score, and again, I recommend that you keep it open. Credit scores vary so frequently. They're just like these arbitrary numbers that these credit bureaus come up with. But a couple of the ways in which they're calculated is the length of how long you have the credit for. The balances, so like let's say your outstanding balance, let's say that your credit limit is $10,000 and you have a $9,000 limit, you've used $9,000 of that, then you only have $1,000. Your debt ratio is going to be really high. Okay, so that would impact your credit score. So I'm going to kind of sidetrack and cover something I covered the other day. So typically the rule of thumb is you should have no more than 50% of your balance of your available credit on a credit card used. So if you have a credit card that has a $10,000 credit limit, you should not charge or use more than 50% of that, which would be $5,000. If once you start to go over that $5,000, you become a credit risk. That means that because remember that $10,000 number was given to you based on a previous credit score. Now you're using the credit card, and as you're using it, if you go over that like 50%, it's usually roughly around 50, then they consider you a credit risk. So I had somebody the other day that said that they were getting ready to buy a house and their credit score was declining and they needed a way. So my quick recommendation, if you want to try to tackle your credit score and try to improve it, would be number one, call the credit card company and see if you have a good pattern of payment, you've been making payments every single month and they're on time, there's no lates, call your credit card company and see if they can increase your balance. Let's say if they can take that $10,000 and increase it to $12,000 for you. If you had now you can have $6,000 outstanding balance on there. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you could do is split your payment. So if your minimum payment is $100 a month on the credit card, pay $50 and then like 2 weeks before the due date, and then pay. So basically every 2 weeks you're paying $50. Twice a month. You would pay it on the due date and then 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks later it's due. So that's how it would go. So you would split your payment. It shows as a double payment on their end, and it can quickly improve your credit score. How do you budget when your pay is getting cut significantly? Maternity leave. Okay. So somebody commented about this before and I said to come. So here is my recommendation. First off, congratulations. Welcome to motherhood if you're not already a mother. Second of all, my baby is going to be 13 on September. So it has been many, many years since I've had to be in that baby buying phase of diapers and wipes and formula and food and onesies and all those little like things and Dreft and all that stuff. So the way I'm interpreting this is that you're going to be on maternity leave. Income is going to stop during maternity leave, and although you've been saving, you're still trying to budget for how there's going to be a loss of income while you're home with the baby. So my recommendation is, I'm not sure where you shop, I'm not sure what is in your area. Figure out where you plan on buying a bulk of your items for your baby. So I'm just going to, again, it's been a long time since I'm out of this field. Let's hypothetically say, and you're in Canada, so I don't even know if Target's in Canada, but let's say it's a store like Target or a Walmart or something that you plan on using. And I would recommend a store like that too, for a second reason I'll give you. But first off, I would find out where you want to start looking at costs of items, right? Like, so try to get an idea of how much, where do you feel like the cheapest place is to buy all the items that you're going to need for your baby. And then right now, to prepare you, buy gift cards for that store. So any extra money that you have, or just some extra money, maybe put it towards, like if you normally would go and shop there and spend $100, maybe try to see if you could buy a $50 gift card every time you go. Now, when you're out on maternity leave, you can use those gift cards that you were buying while your money was coming in, to be able to buy items that you need for your child or for your family, while your income is significantly reduced while you're home with your baby. Maternity leave is 12 months. It's a long time. So I'm sure that you've been planning for it and that you've been able to save money. I'm hoping, if this is the same person who commented before, had said that they were saving money. So if you are saving money, that would be my first recommendation. Get gift cards. Now, the reason why I recommend, if you, and again, I don't know if I don't even know if there's like a Walmart or whatever, or a store like that, like a store that's a convenience store that's large, that sells multiple things, right? They sell food, they sell clothes, they sell baby items, they sell shoes, they sell all that kind of stuff. If there's a store similar to that the second reason is because even if you might need to buy food and stuff, and you'll be able to buy it there using those gift cards as well. So those gift cards don't have to exclusively be just used for baby items. You would be able to use those, you would be able to use the money, also the gift cards, to be able to use other things. What I had done, and again, like I said, my baby is going to be 13 on Saturday. What I had done when I knew I was having children, when I was pregnant, I started buying in bulk, like baby formula and stuff like that. But I don't know if I would necessarily recommend that, because I'm not sure like what return policies are and things like that. And God forbid you buy something and then your child's allergic to it. And now you have all this stuff that you spend $30 on a can or whatever the price is now, and then you can't return it. So I don't know if I would. I did that, but I don't know if I would necessarily recommend that. I think the best thing is extra money, gift cards, and ask people for gift cards. That way then you'll be able to cover your variable expenses with those gift cards, right? Your groceries, even some places like gas. Like I know Walmarts have gas places, and stuff like that. But try to put money aside for that. Also, you can try to, it's not really going to do anything for the short term, but you can try to make like half payments on bills. You can, I was thinking like a mortgage kind of thing. You can make a half a payment every 2 weeks. That'll help you, but that kind of helps you a little bit more in the long run. My quick response to that would be definitely the gift cards. Is that kind of what you were looking for? Like, because I think that your fixed expenses you would already have known, right? You know what your mortgage is going to be. So even though you're out for 12 months, you know what that's going to be. So you were able to kind of prepare for that. And I'm assuming that you have a dual income. So then the other your partner that's working, hopefully will be able to afford most of those fixed. And then those gift cards and stuff would be able to assist with some of those variable expenses that you have. Any more questions? Any more questions? So Zojo, did I answer your question good? Is that, she's still on. All right. Anyone else, I'm not sure, come in, you want me to go back and send you screenshots? I can turn I'll turn that around anyway. I'm going to share this with you now. Dropping everything. All right, so the first thing that we went over tonight were those fixed and variable expenses. I'm going to share this with you so that way then you guys can take a screenshot of it. This will help you get a budget set up. So you can, your fixed expenses, what they are, your variable expenses, what they are, and then what you do. So you make a list of all those fixed and variable expenses. If you're unsure about those variable expenses, track them for a month, or you can go back 3 to 6 months and get an average, or look at how much the bill was previous year. And then you add up all your fixed and variable expenses and deduct that from your monthly salary, and the money left over is your surplus. All right, when budgeting those credit cards at this stage, that's where you put the minimum due. So over here, when I go over this page with you again, that's what this is for, right? So we're already budgeting these minimum payments, the minimum amount due every month. And again, your minimum amount due every month should not change. It shouldn't go up. If anything, it should go down, because you are committing to not using your credit card every month. Okay, so you've already now budgeted your minimum. So once you've added everything up and deducted it from your salary, now you have your surplus money. So now this is where your surplus money gets divided into 3 ways. First is an emergency fund, which we're going to talk about again. I'll just review with you. Second would be you would start tackling paying down those credit card debts. And lastly would be where you focus on some of those sinking funds, which is where you made your short, mid, and long-term goals. So your emergency fund is if you have $1,000, right? So the amount emergency fund, the recommendation is $1,000. You should have $1,000 put aside. If you have $1,000 now in savings, then that's great. Move on to pay down the credit cards. Snowball. Okay, we're going to go over that in a second. And you could start building sinking funds. If you have more than $1,000 in your bank, then use the remainder to pay down the credit cards. Just keep $1,000 in savings and use the additional money to start paying down those credit cards. If you don't have $1,000, then you should only be paying the minimum on your credit cards until you have $1,000. So if you do not have $1,000, then you just pay the minimum, okay? And the minimum is what you're putting into your variable expenses. So how do you pay down that credit card debt? So this is like the main question. How do I pay down my credit card debt? Okay, so we're going to use the snowball or the avalanche method. This is what it is commonly known as. Okay, so how it works. You're going to use that surplus money. So after you've allocated money after you've added up your fixed and your variable expenses and you've deducted it from your monthly income, that is your surplus money. That's the money that you're going to use to either snowball or work on your sinking funds or your $1,000 for your emergency fund. You list out all your credit card balances, the total expenses, organize them from largest to smallest balances, and then you focus on the credit card with the smallest outstanding balance first. Pay the minimum amount due each month on all of the other credit cards, and then you add your surplus money to the lowest credit card in addition to its minimum amount that you already allocated in your variable budget. I know it's very wordy. That's why I wrote everything down. Hopefully this will explain it. So this is an example of how a snowball method would work. Excuse me. So I listed all my credit cards. I have a Chase credit card. The total amount, my outstanding balance, is $12,500. The minimum due each month is $500 on that credit card. The next one is my Citibank credit card, hypothetically, with a $10,000 balance, and that minimum is $400 a month. The next one is my Best Buy credit card with $5,500 minimum balance. That's $150 a month. Next would be my Amazon bill with a $3,000 outstanding balance, and my minimum is $125 a month. And last would be my Target credit card with $2,500 outstanding balance and $100 minimum. You add it all up and it's $1,275. This is what you would have done anyway for when you were doing your variable expenses. You would have done all of this because that $1,275 is what's going to go into your variable expenses. Because like I said on the previous ones, you're going to pay your minimums on all of those. So that $1,275, it's not $1,275 in addition. You already allocated that $1,275 to your in your variable expenses. So this is the number that you would use. So that's why that asterisk is there. This is the number that you would use for your variable expenses estimate per month. Okay. Now let's say that your surplus after you've paid all your bills and you've deducted all your fixed and variable expenses from your salary. Let's say that surplus is $500 a month. So you have $500 left over. You would pay the minimum on the 4 largest credit cards. So on those top 4, Chase, Citibank, Best Buy, and Amazon, you're just going to pay the $500, the $400, the $150, and the $125. Then what you would do is you would add that surplus, that $500, to the $100 minimum that you are sending to Target. So I would send $600. I'd add the $500 to that 100, and now I'm sending them $600 a month. Once Target is paid off, you would snowball that $600 to your Amazon. So now once you've paid all this off, because if you're sending $600, that's going to get paid off in 4 months. Now in 4 months, that $600 is free, and you're going to add that $600 to your Amazon $125, and you're going to be sending Amazon $725 a month. That's going to be paid off in like 4 months, right? 4.5, 5 months. So now under a year, you've already paid down 2 credit cards. Then once that's paid off, now you're going to take that $725 and add that to the $150. Now you have $875 that you're sending to Best Buy. $875, that's again another 6 months. That's done. So now you're a little bit over a year. Now the $875, you're going to add it to the $400. Now you're going to be sending $1275 to Citibank. That's going to take a little bit longer, right? So roughly 10 months, a little bit less than that, hypothetically. Probably, definitely less than that, because you've already been paying the $400 minimum on it and you haven't been using it. As long as you haven't been using that credit card, that overall balance should slightly go down. Again, when you're paying that minimum, you're really just paying the interest. You're paying like pennies on your principal, but still it should go down enough. And then once you're done paying that $1275, you would then put that $1275 to the $500 that you were already sending to Chase. Now you're at $1775. You're going to be paying that down in less than a year. That's so if this was somebody's budget, if I was doing somebody's budget, I would, if this is you, I would be telling you would technically be out of debt within like 2 years, a little bit more, as long as you stick to a stringent budget and you stay on it and you don't use the credit cards. If you use them, then you're doing all this work for nothing, right? Because then you're not staying committed or focused. Now that's what that $1,000 is for, right? That $1,000 emergency fund. If you're putting that $1,000 emergency fund, if that money is already there, then if God forbid there's an emergency or something happens, you get a flat tire and you need to go and get new tires on your car, and that's $400. Now you don't need to take the credit card out that you just worked your butt off to clear up to pay the $400. You have that. Then what you would do the next month is you would try to save the $400 to get your emergency fund back up to $1,000. And that's how you kind of stay focused on the process of getting out of debt. I'll be honest, a huge part of it is writing everything down, right? The first step that I told you guys to do is to make your goals. The reason why is because when you're making sacrifices, sometimes you start to question, you feel defeated, right? You feel defeated. What am I doing all this for? Like, what if God, look, we just lived through we're still living through a horrible pandemic right now. What, I should just screw it, just take that vacation. I mean, you can, that's the option that you take, but it's going to push things back, right? So if you opt to use the credit card and take that vacation, then where does that, what does that do? It derailed you. But what does that do as far as getting yourself further out of debt? Sure. So the saving for the house would be your sinking fund. That actually was the last page that I didn't go back over. So, the main question here is going to be, how much money do you have and you don't need to put this out here publicly, but just ask yourself this, or just kind of keep note of this as I'm saying this. How much money do you have in surplus after your fixed and variable expenses? So let's say it was the $500 like that. And how much debt are you in? Because you're sinking, the more debt you're in, then the more realistic you need to be with sinking funds, right? So because you're really not going to be able to save too much for a house if you have like $20,000 in credit card debt. Your focus should be to try to pay off that credit card debt. And for more than one reason. Number one, just owning a house is draining. It's expensive. There's constantly unexpected expenses. So you really want to try to, get your spending and your debt under control before you take on a huge undertaking as taking a house. I can tell you there's a lot of unexpected incurred expenses with owning a home. Cheers, by the way. So, but let's say like I shared my budget in one of my videos previously. So I had like $1,500 in surplus. If you have a lot more money in surplus, then maybe you just want to send $500 to the credit cards. Maybe your credit card's not so big, and then you would put $1,000 to your sinking fund for saving for your house. And if you're saving for something so big, try not to have tons and tons of different like sinking funds. Like don't have vacations and holidays and birthdays and weddings, and like it's just, you have to kind of, if you're going to save for something so large, then that would be your predominant focus for your sinking fund. Then you're going to pay off your debt and make a commitment to try to put everything to paying down for that down payment for a house. There's other ways to being able to attain income too. So let's say that you are able to take a loan out on, I don't recommend taking a loan out on like a 401k or anything, but if you are in like an annuity fund or something like that, where you could take, where you have to really look into it and speak to somebody locally that's in finance, or speak to somebody that works, the affiliate from whatever company you work for, as far as savings. You could also look to taking money out from there for some kind of down payment or something like that, but not a 401k. And the reason why not a 401k, an annuity is different, but a 401k is way different, because the money is going in pre-tax, and then when you take it out, you get taxed now for taking it out, and then there's penalties for taking it out because you're not of age to take it out, because it's intended for be over a certain, like 65 or something, or 62, and then so you get double tax, and then you get taxed again when you file taxes. So that's not a recommendation I'd have. But if you have an annuity fund or something, like I know at my job, I can take a loan from my retirement, so to speak, and there is an interest that's incurred in paying it back, but the interest goes back to myself. When I pay it back, it actually goes back to me when I pay it. So that's another recommendation. All right. Anybody else have any more questions? Otherwise, I'm going to hop off. All right. I plan on doing another live tomorrow, and then I have a visitor coming. I have a friend visiting for the weekend, so I will not be able to be live streaming until maybe Sunday. So I'm going to hop back on probably tomorrow for an hour or so, see if I can help anybody, probably review some of the things that I did, try to respond to some more questions in the live, and from comments that people put on videos. And yeah, if anybody has any specific questions, please feel free to, comment it on my videos, send me an email, which is located in my bio. There's my email address, or you can send me a DM through here. And yeah, so all right, guys, have a great night. Thanks for attending.